Hey everyone, Kirk from TipHaus here, answering another of our most common questions we get from restaurant owners and managers. What is tip pooling? What is tip sharing? And which one should we use at our restaurant? Well, here at TipHaus, we automate tip distribution and calculation for thousands of restaurants across the nation. And this is something we hear from operators every single day. So let's break these two topics down into simple and easy to understand goals and examples. Tip pooling is when one or multiple groups of employees contribute all of their tips to a restaurant fund, and then all of those tips in that fund are returned to the employees after calculations occur. This is a bi-directional movement of money where employees deposit into the tip pool and withdraw tips from that same tip pool. Tip sharing, on the other hand, is when one or multiple groups of employees contribute some of their tips to a specific group of employees who usually assisted them during that time. And this can be based on total tips, sales, or other factors altogether. So this is a single directional movement of money where employees send a percentage of money to another group of employees. And you say, oh man, that's a lot of technical stuff. Can I just get this in English with some poorly drawn graphics? And I say, absolutely. I just taught myself this design software. So let's go see some common examples and the math behind it. Here you might see as a common tip pool example, a coffee shop that has three baristas working during their day. These three baristas work as a team to make sure the guests are happy, that sometimes they work the coffee machine, sometimes the register, but they all help to make sure things are going smoothly. Barista A works 5 hours and earned $40 in tips. Barista B works 3 hours and earned $40 in tips. And Barista C works 2 hours and earned $20 in tips. Okay, so the most common form of tip pooling combines all of these tips that they earned and then redistributes those tips back to these employees based on the hours that they worked relative to each other on a daily basis. So if we take these totals above, we can do some simple math and we would see that all employees combined worked 10 hours. And that if you add all their tips up, that's $100 in tips. So now we need to understand how much is an hour worth in this tip pool. Well, we simply divide $100 by 10, and we learn that each employee and every hour that they work is worth $10 of tips. So these tips would be shared back to these employees based on the hours that they worked, such as Barista A would earn $50 from the tip pool. Barista B would earn $30 from the tip pool, and Barista C would earn $20 from the tip pool. It is important to note that the total tips here above is still equal to $100, right? Every hour that they work just becomes worth $10 because we had to take that total to start with. So we're never losing or gaining extra money. It's always going to be redistributed, but the total should match each other. So depending on your operations, this could be your exact goal, right? Barista A worked the most hours, so presumably they contributed the most to the coffee stand in terms of sales, prep work, training others, etc. Now, this is a very simple tip pool. So let's take a look at tip sharing and we'll add a slightly more realistic scenario to it. So remember, in a tip pool, employees are contributing all of their tips to a common pot of money and then withdrawing money from that same pot. Whereas tip sharing, on the other hand, is a single movement of money, either depositing or receiving to or from another group of employees. So in this example, a restaurant has two servers, one bartender, and one host working. And for simplicity, we're going to assume all of these employees work the exact same number of hours in a day. Server A earned $50 in tips. Server B also earned $50 in tips. The bartender earned $40 in tips, and the host earned $0 in tips, of course, because they actually don't serve a guest directly. So in this restaurant, there is a tip sharing rule that says hosts are tip shared 3% of all employees' tips, and bartenders are tip shared 5% of all tips. In this scenario, two money transfers are happening, but they are both happening in just one direction. First is the rule that hosts are shared 3% of all employees' tips. This means both the servers and the bartender must pay the host. So both servers pay the host $1.50 from their tips, 3% of their $50 earned, and seating the guest and taking care of them and checking people in, making sure that the servers can actually serve, the host has performed their job. Whereas the bartender pays the host 3% of their tips, or $1.20. Next comes the rule that bartenders receive 5% of tips from the floor. So this covers all the time that the bartender spent making these beverages for the guests of the servers, right? Where the guests do not sit at the bar, they're at the table, but they still order a beer or a wine or a cocktail. The bartender has to take time to make that drink for that server to serve them. In this scenario, both servers are giving 5% of their total tips, or $2.50, to the bartender. And after all this is said and done, we now end up at server A earned $50 in tips, but paid their supporting team members a total of $4. So they now have $46 left in tips. Server B has the exact same scenario. The bartender earned $40 in tips, but paid their host $1.20 and received from the servers $5, making it a total of $43.80. And the host earned $4.20 in tips for their help supporting servers and bartenders and getting guests sat on time, maybe cleaning or bussing, etc. Just like with tip pooling, it's important to note when we look at the total, when we add these up, that it's always going to equal 140. No money is lost. It is simply being redistributed. All right, that's a lot of talking, and we've covered a lot of things real quick. So let's take a real quick recap and see exactly what we did and why here. So tip pooling moves all of the tips into one fund and then redistributes to the same employees who contributed to that fund after calculations happen, right? So there's going to be different amounts moving, but all the money goes in, all the money comes out to all the employees that are helping into that pool. This is best used for employees doing similar or the same job, or for a simplified way to collect and distribute tips among employees. Tip sharing, on the other hand, moves a percentage of tips from one group of employees to another group of employees. And sharing is generally best used when it's a group of employees that benefit from the work of another group of employees. So when servers benefit from the bartenders and the host and the busser, for example. Or for very granular tip distribution scenarios, if you really want to dial this in and make sure your operations are tight, you oftentimes want to use tip sharing. Now, let's go one step deeper and see what a slightly more realistic model to the restaurant world might look like. In this case, we're going to look at both tip pooling and tip sharing happening at the same time in conjunction. So we'll take a common example of a full service restaurant. Maybe this is your neighborhood spot that you like to go eat at, relatively small, all things considered, may have 7 or 8 employees working front of house on a busy night. So this restaurant has 4 servers working, 2 bartenders, a busser, and a host, all working to support their guests. And for simplicity's sake, we're going to say that they all work the same number of hours. One bartender is working the bar top, serving the guests that are drinking and dining at the bar itself. The other bartender is working the well, making drinks for the guests at the dining tables themselves and at the sit-down tables, the cocktail lounge, whatever it may be. The 4 servers all work the floor, and the busser and the host, of course, are helping seating everyone, making sure tables are clean and there's quick turnovers, etc. The tip distribution policy in this restaurant is as follows. Servers tip out bartenders 5% of their tips. Bartenders and servers tip the supporting staff, the busser and the host, a total of 5% of their tips, or 2.5% to each, and bartenders pool tips among themselves. This is dozens of calculations having to occur, so I won't bore you by walking you through each one or give you an aneurysm by trying to draw this many arrows on the screen. But I will show you the starting position and the end results of what would happen, assuming all of these employees work the same number of hours. Most importantly, what we want to get to is the why. Why do we want this result? Why are we as restaurant operators trying to find ways to make this work? Well, in this case, 2 bartenders are working. One is serving the guest. One is making drinks for the servers to serve their guest. Only one bartender is actually collecting tips, right? The person who's serving the guest at the bar is swiping that credit card, is giving cash receipts, etc. They're getting tips. The other bartender is not, but they are both critical and they're interchangeable into which job they can do. So since they're both critical and they're both needed, they both work the same number of hours, they should be making the same amount of dollars. Next come the servers. And now all the servers contribute a small percentage of their tips to other employees who assist them during their time because they're helping them to earn those tips. This allows them to focus on bringing in the most revenue to the restaurant, giving the best guest experience, all of these elements where you don't want the restaurant to have to worry about servers trying to seat and clean and turn things over, etc. All of that is a time waste for servers. So last but not least, we have the service and support staff on the back end of that, right? So the support staff looks like the host, the busser, and we need them to walk away with some tips. They never actually interact with the payment for the guest, so they don't have an opportunity to be tipped directly. However, as we know, they are critical to a great guest experience, and they allow their colleagues to give great service and earn those tips that they are, so they should take part in them as well. So what started as $400 in tips of the employees ends as $400 for all of the employees still. However, we have successfully redistributed the money to team members who are supporting their ability to earn tips along the way. Takeaways and what we learned. Let's look at what did we really cover and what do we need to know as we leave this. Tip distribution is an asset to restaurants, and when it's executed properly, it can lead to a better guest experience, a more cohesive team, and savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tip sharing, best used for moving money to employees who assist other employees. Tip pooling, best used for people performing similar or identical jobs or in relation to one another. These are all simplified examples. It's important to know, but real world applications are much trickier. However, there are millions of cases of them being done every single day. There are oftentimes dozens of rules and pools that happen in conjunction. You have to account for how long every employee works. You can even introduce things like point systems, where the bartender may make $3 out of the tip pool for every $1 the host takes, etc. Thousands of ways to skin the cat here, so to speak, y'all. But most importantly is that we're looking for what works best for your restaurant and operations. I really do hope this was helpful and educational. If you're interested in anything more about this, we always have more episodes and videos available. You can check out our channel. We love to talk about tip pooling, common examples and analysis, common mistakes and legal pitfalls, etc. And last but not least, if you have questions, reach out. You're always welcome. You can visit us at tiphaus.com and schedule a demo to see what we do, or you can simply send us an email at tips@tiphaus.com and we'll get back to you. So thank you so much, and I hope you learned something today. Cheers.